Start it. There you go.
Well, hello, everyone. My name is Lucy Beiler. As Linda said, I'm familiar with the BIAWW. Thank you very much, though. And I'm in awe that 31 years have passed since I had a car accident where I was rear-ended. I was 30 years old at the time, and I was pregnant with our third child. So that added a lot of emotional dilemma to it, as well as complications that with the pregnancy and so forth. And we also had 2 other children. So it was, you know, being this mom and caregiver, full-time caregiver for children, it's like, oh my goodness, what do I do now that I'm rear-ended and I have instant headaches? It was just the positioning that I was in the car. There wasn't a whole lot of damage to the car, yet that's not what mattered. It was how much damage there was that I had to deal with. I had left-sided neck and shoulder pain. Unfortunately, I'm left-handed, and so that actually created a lot of grief as far as doing my daily activities with our children and so forth, because everything aggravated my neck and shoulder, which then only made the headaches worse. And I also experienced, I'll first just rhyme off some of the symptoms and so forth that I was dealing with at the time. So not only was there the left-sided damage, and I also had memory loss. I struggled to say words. It was like I could see them floating by in my mind's eye, but I couldn't actually say it. When I was reading something, I couldn't remember what I had read, which I found extremely distressful because I was at the time planning on studying to become a financial planner. So by adding words and numbers, it was, I had to put that aside. So I didn't pursue that career. It scrambled my thinking. I had light sensitivity. And again, the headaches were horrendous. So if there was a scale of 1 out of 10, but then with 2 little children, it could be, you know, 1 out of 20 by noon hour. And I wondered how I would get through the rest of the day. I wasn't sleeping well, not just because of the pregnancy, but the headaches. And then to top it all off, the insurance company, the auto insurance company, was terrible. They didn't help at all. It was unfortunately a 4-year legal battle. As much as it was a precedent-setting case and it's helped other people, which I'm thankful for, it was a tremendous amount of extra stress and grief that was just so unnecessary. I see how much it added to my whole pain scenario, because so much of my time and energy was directed towards this legal hassle that was just a waste, an absolute waste. Let me see. It actually literally changed every aspect of my life. I knew at the time that I was very high functioning. I could take on lots of activities. As Linda had mentioned, I've always been really energetic, but the car accident definitely gave me a reminder that my energy was going to be sucked for trying to deal with chronic pain and everything that had come with this. It got down to where I could only go for short outings, so I had to adjust everything I did with our children. They didn't go in a lot of activities. We did more things at home. I would have their little friends come over, or a mom or a parent and a little friend, so that I had extra help. It was beyond frustrating, especially because this was just so not how I was used to functioning, which I found interesting. At the time, it was considered an MTBI, which is a mild traumatic brain injury. And I thought to myself, if this is mild and these are the symptoms of a mild traumatic brain injury, gee, I wonder what a full-blown TBI is. And then I realized that, for me anyways, MTBI was more how the medical world was defining, oh, well, you don't have, you know, major organ issues and so forth and so on. And yet, for me, it was traumatic because it impacted me and changed my world. And so it was really a horrific time in my life. I'd like to switch to actually spending much more time on, so how did I move forward? Because really that's what the 31 years have been about. And immediately I did seek out chiropractic. Fortunately, someone said, get your eyes checked In my era growing up, we didn't go to an optometrist or a vision therapist. There actually were no vision therapists at the time that I had my car accident, at least that I didn't know of any. And sure enough, I needed glasses. And so that made a big difference, that it reduced the headaches. I was going for chiropractic physiotherapy. Thankfully, I also connected with an amazing psychotherapist because of the emotional components that I was feeling and how it had impacted so much of how I lived. I really needed an objective perspective and someone who knew a lot about chronic pain and so forth. I did massage, nutrition, yoga. I've done meditation, and I will go to a list of the things that I currently do that are in my daily routine or that I rotate in and around and about. I do lots of different body movement. I do a process called somatic experiencing. My mother used to come 3 days a week to help me out with, especially then I had issue with in the pregnancy. Unfortunately, I'd had a seizure in the 8th month, and they didn't know if the baby would be okay or if I would be paralyzed. So just those things, when I think about it, without a head injury would be a lot to deal with. And so I am eternally grateful that my mom could come on a regular basis and be with me to do all of the regular chores and spend lots of time loving and hugging her grandchildren. And I cried an awful lot because it was a big relief not to carry all of the emotions within me. And I asked a lot. I asked for help. I asked friends, acquaintances, people at meetings, if I needed something adjusted or whatever. I needed to, find the courage within me to say, I want to be here to try and heal myself. And even though this was my own personal talk to myself, but I did ask, could it be in a quieter room? Could the lights be turned down? Could the volume be adjusted? Could people maybe repeat something or speak more slowly? Which reminds me, I hope that I'm not speaking too quickly right now. So Linda, please jump in and slow me down if necessary. In order to look at things like gaining my memory and focus, I chose to get involved in activities that I was actually very interested in. And at the time, since our kids were little and going through the school system, I actually joined the school council at the elementary school. And when I went, I said to myself, okay, just attend. I didn't have to stay for the whole meeting. I could take notes. I didn't have to ask questions to begin with. It was really a way for me to test the waters, that I could go out and attend a meeting, see what I could take away from the meeting in terms of my own memory and concentration, and then to continue to go back. And I mean, over the years, as much as this talk is about condensing 31 years of my life, over the years, I realized that if I chose to change and I chose small, easy steps, success leads to the next success, but it also made the harder steps easier. So I very much encourage people that if there's something that you're wanting to shift or make different change in your life, choose simple and easy things. And then it's like, oh, wow, you know what, I can continue, and then take on more difficult tasks as you go. Let's see. I altered the outings that I would do. This also wreaked havoc with my marriage. It was strained and stressed a lot. And at the same time, we hung in there knowing or hoping that the future could be with a lot less headaches than what I was experiencing at the time. We were fortunate that if we went to an outing, my husband and I, that we could take 2 cars. I was glad that I hadn't lost my license in the process. That was a possibility at one point. So even though we would go together, usually I was leaving earlier because loud and noisy wasn't great. I love Oktoberfest, but it's still loud and noisy. And so I would come home sooner and he would stay and hang with our friends. I needed to make sure that I was trying to get extra sleep. So again, the help from my mother came in handy. She was doing chores while I might be getting some extra sleep. Let's see. So those are some of the things that I did along the way in order to in order to try and move forward. I didn't name them off in any particular order. But one of the things that was a really big shift for me with the help of my psychotherapist, and that was to realize that just because I had tried a lot of different therapies or modalities and that I wasn't really feeling like I was experiencing a lot of relief, that there wasn't something wrong with me. It was that I just hadn't necessarily found what worked for me. But when I say that I felt there was something wrong with me, I realized that was more about me as the person, not my physical body. It's like, why isn't this working? And it became a berating of myself instead of a shift in my perspective to, okay, what things are working, or even aspects of a different modality, say yoga. So no, I couldn't, when I went for yoga, I couldn't do extreme poses or postures, but I could do the subtle yoga. I could lay with supported bolsters under my legs and my neck supported in an elongated fashion. I could pay attention to how my posture was, and then it could evolve from there. But then something that helped me with yoga also maybe benefited me with when I was sitting doing meditation, and back and forth. So again, psychologically though, the recognition that I was still a whole person, and that it was, I had the desire to continue to seek out different ways to potentially get rid of the chronic pain, that there was still me as the person, and that I was fine with who I was, no matter what. Then it was the other aspects of, wow, I really want these headaches to go away. The headaches in particular probably took at least 15 years before I was seeing any sense of relief. I remember how distressed I felt when my chiropractor, after the first 6 months, said, well, usually the longer that it takes, the longer that you have a pain, the longer it can take for it to go away. And I found that like heartbreaking, thinking, oh my goodness, like, well, how long is long? And in essence, that's not something I could determine unless I continued to show up every day and live into the best that I could that day. Somewhere along the lines in the last 30 years, I ran into Maya Angelou's quote that said, do the best you can, and when you know better, do better. And so I took that to heart and realized that I was doing my best. But doing my best didn't necessarily mean like doing more. Doing my best was doing my best in the moment. So if that was a severe headache, it meant then resting. If it was asking for help, then it was asking for help. And as the years went by and the kids got older, I could see a little more freedom for more personal time. I constantly challenged myself, say, to do more reading so that I could enhance my memory and concentration. I had lost entire chunks of my memory, and rather than continually focusing on what I had lost, I also recognized I did need to shift, even if it was tiny shifts, to, okay, but what can I do now? And how can I then just continue to be thankful in this moment, and then to continue to move forward? Let me see. In terms of the strategies that I actually currently use, and I'm giving you this list from a place where I'm extremely grateful and thankful that I can say that I no longer have chronic headaches. I've overcome all of the chronic pain in the left side of my body. At 61, I do feel extremely energized. I have gained back most of my memory of past events, and I also look at that aspect as everyone's going to forget something. It's not about remembering absolutely everything in my life, and it feels amazing. I'm here in Victoria. I'm with our grandchildren. just hanging out, being able to play with them. I can engage in pretty much any physical activity that I'm choosing to. And I know that it was my own persistence, even if it meant 2 steps forward and 5 back and then another few, that I did have the desire and willpower for my own sake and for my family's sake to continue trying and learning and reaching out for help and living life to the best that I could. So here's the list of the strategies that I currently use. I definitely get regular vision tests. It's great that through the BIAWW that you can, you have all of these resources that have to do with vision therapy and so forth. I've done a lot of research now in terms of neuroscience and brain plasticity and rewiring of the brain. And your vision is just so important for how your brain functions and how you function on a daily basis that I encourage anyone I run into who tells me they have any kind of a balance issue or have had a brain injury to don't walk but run to get your vision checked. I also practice on a daily basis, which this rotates one day, maybe not, or in a cycle. I practice yoga. I practice varying balancing movements. This can be anything from walking on the edge of the curb to hopping or skipping, taking longer strides so that one foot is in the air longer, standing on one foot. I've become aware that balancing and your sense of balance has a great deal to do with cultivating brain function. So that's something that I love continuing. I also took a training in what's called yoga tune-up. It happens to look like these little massage therapy balls. And to me, the cool part of this process is that there's lots of info available on the internet in terms of being able to do it at home. But I travel with these therapy balls all the time so that I know that I can look after myself as much as possible wherever I am. I also do Feldenkrais. It's a type of body movement, but it's very specific for brain rewiring. I do Qigong. I'm very cognizant of my posture. I hope that right now that you're noticing that when I'm sitting, my head is not forward, but that it's in alignment with my spine, because that has a lot to do with whether I induce a headache or whether I maintain good posture so that I also feel calm. I took a course in what's called Buteyko breathing, and this breathwork process has been amazing. It's the difference between, say, being caught up in anxiety and being able to draw on those strategies and be able to bring a sense of calm to my whole body. I do practice meditation on a daily basis. In particular, and I'm mentioning his name because I have found his books and his research to be outstanding, and it's Dr. Joe Dispenza. And I have followed him for the last 10 years because it was a huge turning point in my recovery to recognize the benefits of meditation. And for me, meditation, my definition is that I am present to the moment. This is not some woo-woo sitting cross-legged. It's that no matter what I'm doing, even if it means slowing down my thinking and speaking out loud, because you cannot talk as fast as you can think, at least I can't. And so I slow myself down in the present moment to maintain presence to the moment. And that way I don't get caught up in some worry about the future, because really that's worrying about something that isn't even happened. And that presence to the moment, that cultivation of that has been absolutely life altering. I will go for what's called somatic experiencing if I run into a situation that I'm feeling is emotionally still really impacting me, because it's a way of releasing the energetics of the emotion from the body so that it's not a constant looping in my head. And I keep in touch with a terrific psychotherapist. It's not on a regular basis anymore, but to me, that's about staying healthy and getting a different perspective when I feel that I'm stuck in a place. I read a lot now in order to keep up with the what I think might be the latest that's available in health, nutrition, brain sciences, and so forth. I'm very cognizant of my nutrition. I've studied in the area of what's best for brain health. I have it written down here, living in the moment. I guess that's important. I'm saying it more than once. I try to tap into laughter and stay more light in a situation, knowing that that's just easier on a pain scenario to feel more laughter, yet without denying any emotions. It's more reaching for the laughter while acknowledging that, yes, I can feel a sadness, and is there an element where I can see some lightness to the situation? I definitely work a lot on feeling all of my feelings, and not a hard kind of work, but an acknowledgement of what's going on for me, no matter who I am with, even if I'm acknowledging it to myself, so that I can always go back and say, oh, what was it about that situation that I felt sadness or a frustration, or is this, or what opportunity is there for me to learn from this? That brings me to another aspect that I incorporate, and that's called question thinking. There's a woman in the States, Mary Lee Adams, and she wrote, the name of the book escapes me, but it really comes down to asking myself questions from a place of playful curiosity. And in essence, playful curiosity is a brain state that children are in. And that's that you'll notice that they will hold a toy, but they'll turn it over and they try it this way and that way, but they're not necessarily berating themselves right away that, it doesn't fit and whatever, as much as there can be frustrations. But a playful curiosity, when I'm asking questions, has my brain in a more open, receptive state for accessing the thinking part of the brain and coming up with different solutions to a situation. And from all the notes that I've written, that's about everything that I have written down. I really welcome your questions. I really like to impress on you that this has been 31 years of researching and discovering and trying things, and also coming to rely on my own voice, not just the external voices of who I thought were professionals, because in essence, I wanted to become, I guess, my own professional in terms of, is this something I really wanted to try, or was I open to it? Or maybe it needed to wait. If chiropractic didn't work at the time, that was okay. Maybe I could go back to it at another time. And to be just more open to different options based on my input, as well as the input from professionals in their field. And making things more a discussion than okay, I guess I have to do that. Well, no, I have evolved to where I am asking, is this right for me at this time? How does this factor into my day, and so forth? So.
Well, thank you, Lucy. I'm just put out an item on the chat there if anyone has a question. I know there is one question out there for some of the people on the call. There are challenges when dealing with school-age children. What did you feel was the most helpful in trying to deal with their uncertainty of what was happening to their mom?
I made sure that the teachers and the principal were aware that I had a brain injury. And so that already set it up so that the teachers were, paying attention. Was this an issue for our children? And they were happy to call me if there was anything that came up. There were lots of times that I sat on the couch and cried with them and said, I have a headache, and I'm staying here with you, and we can play together. It became a lot of reaching out for friends, because I would say to my kids, and as much as they were, I had a 6'3" and newborn at the within the 8 months of the accident or 9 months. Still, as they got older, I was explaining to them, I was taking the time to say, well, we can go on that outing, but we might not be staying as long. And then I would look at other options. So could they go home with someone else, or were they willing to go home with someone else? And so that they could stay for the whole duration. So I looked for strategies, and I asked for a lot of help, and had my kids play at at their friends' houses, so that they had a sense of, well, I hate to use the word normalcy, because I mean, really, what's normal? We're all different people. And yet they knew that because of the pain scenario that I was dealing with, that, yeah, mommy needs to lay down a little more often, but then there was somebody else there, or whichever. I hope that's addressing the question.
Yeah, I know there's at least a couple of people on the call that have school-age children, so I think that's important.
Yeah, and even from the standpoint, Linda, of homework with school-age children, I couldn't always help them. They had a book that would go back and forth between, it was like their daily planner. So I would often write in it, we didn't get to this homework, but we can deal with it the next day. Or right. That their dad was helping them later. And knowing that it's okay to, doesn't all have to be finished. I mean, I was getting lots of feedback from other parents going, oh, well, I don't even have a head injury, and we sure didn't get through all the homework.
Right.
So.
Good. What therapy was most helpful for your headaches?
Let me think. In the very beginning, I was going for chiropractic very regularly. And yes, it helped, but I felt that at some point it wasn't. Massage was definitely helpful because it was an hour alone. So there was also that. It was a quiet room. There wasn't any other noise, because a lot of noise really exasperated the headaches. And then I have to say that it was learning this meditation and the being present in the moment, because then I could become more the observer of myself instead of being caught up in the pain of the moment. And I'm not trying to make this sound like it was like some cakewalk. It took persistence to stay with it. And I go, oh my gosh, how do I sit here and pay attention or be in the moment? Well, sometimes it evolved to, I could actually see myself having the headache, but there was some kind of separateness started to happen, so that I wasn't as emotionally caught up in the pain.
Yeah.
And when I started to separate the emotion from the actual physical pain, the physical pain diminished.
And how many years after the accident did you notice headaches dissipating, really considerably or sharply? Like, how many years?
That's a good question. Definitely not in the first 5, for sure. It was 4 years of just the insurance company. That was enough to give anyone a headache without car accident. And so for me, I'll bet you it was at least 10 years before I saw a significant difference. And again, because the kids were getting older, I could take more time for myself. So that made a big difference. I was always doing some other modality along with it, though, be it the massage or chiropractic. Or I have to say, though, seeing my psychotherapist on a regular basis and challenging my beliefs and past patterns of how I was living. I said in the beginning when we first started that I was, pretty high energetic, and I was already pretty much living to the max of my energy and everything. And so there was some soul searching, because I was actually also dealing with PTSD, but that word wasn't even in existence back then. And so when it evolved to those conversations, and I looked at some pretty hard times that I had grown up with, I recognized that I actually was living in hypervigilance a lot. And that was a huge piece then, along with the meditation, to step out of the perpetual anxiety. So for me, this hypervigilance presented as I would not sit in a room with my back to the door. I always wanted to know who was coming in. I was scanning the room. I was seeing where everybody was. Well, that was like my body living on high alert all the time. But high alert with a headache or chronic headaches truly made the headaches a lot worse. So as I started to recognize all of the physical patterns that went with that, I could practice not doing that. So for instance, because I wouldn't sit in a room with my back to a door, I would, and this took me a number of months to do, then I would sit so that the side of me was to the door. And eventually I worked through every one of my strategies so that it no longer bothered me. But that took a professional help. That took a psychotherapist to help me walk through that. And then the headaches really started to drop because I was no longer living in a body that was on hypervigilance all the time.
Right. And you didn't talk about depression or any of that. Did that play a role in, I mean, that's a common
it did.
Right? And
it did, and I have to admit that I did not intentionally leave that out. So Linda, I'm really thankful that you're bringing that up. I have to say that there were some extremely low points in my life. And with 3 little children, there were times when I thought, I just want to sit on the couch and cry, or maybe, a shot of booze might help this day. But if I turned to that, I was really concerned that I could become an alcoholic.
Yeah.
And I had fleeting moments of maybe the kids would be better off without me. And it was never suicide in some, planned or anything, but it did cross my mind that there were times when I thought, I don't know if I can truly deal with this if I don't see any kind of improvement in the level of pain that I was experiencing. Yeah. So please, everything that I've said, as much as I'm wanting to share the strategies and so forth that I've used to get to where I'm at, boy, there were definitely really, really dark days along the way. Yeah. And that was all part of it. It's definitely not to be ignored or downplayed in any way, shape, or form, because it really was significant. And that's the biggest piece that I dealt with the psychotherapist.
Okay, thank you for sharing that, Lucy, because I do believe that many people with brain injury go through that and either can't name it or don't want to talk about it. And I think it needs to be aired and needs to be discussed because it's a natural part, I think, of that recovery.
Well, and Linda, to be quite honest, it's interesting because it's not like I felt like I was depressed before the accident, but the fact that you actually get a shake to the head can cause depression, not because you're wanting to be depressed. And depression isn't just brought on by circumstances. Just because I was struggling, with raising or being present with our children and frustrated and so forth with daily tasks, and that depression can come because the brain is taking a rattling that now the all of the chemicals and hormones in the body are different and so it's just going to change how you feel. Yeah. And the whole that's the psychosomatic. There's the psychological piece, and then there's the somatic, which means your body. The two are not separate. There is no such thing as your brain and your body. It's your entire beingness, and that includes how you think and feel and every emotion and how you are in your physicality. I have to say, if one of the biggest things that I learned in my studies of neuroscience, and that's that a thought is an electrical impulse in the brain. A feeling is actually a chemical response in the body. So if you feel fear, it's because there's adrenaline and cortisol are the chemicals that are running through your body. But to think a fearful thought can elicit those chemicals in your body. Well, that's no different than if I'm choosing to sit with a meditation that's focused around the not just the feeling of love, but the actual bodily sensations of love. Where do I feel and how does love feel in my body? I now can practice other emotional states other than the ones that come with any particular emotion. And I know that the whole spectrum of emotions, having had a brain injury, tend to the, frustration and discouraged or depressed and anger. I mean, anger, it's good to release it all, because by denying it, believe me, it will just sit there and fester. And I learned this in a big way with my psychotherapist. And even though I had a brain injury, I also recognized that I can sit, whether it's sitting or walking, because a lot of my meditations are not just sitting. I found that too confining. So if I would walk with a headset on, and then I would practice feeling, what does pride feel like? What does love feel like? So that I was actually experiencing those chemical responses in my body. And the more I practiced feeling those sensations and those feeling states, the more I could also return to them more quickly. It also helped to diminish the other feeling states that I didn't want to hang out in as much. And yet I would never label any emotion as good, bad, right, or wrong. An emotion is merely an emotion. And it's the expression of it. And yet, is it serving you in the long run, or is there another emotional state that I really wanted to hang out in and to shift my energy towards?
Okay, that's a long answer to that question. Thank you. One of the things, another question has come in about how did you choose your psychotherapist? Like how, I know it was a while ago, but what advice do you have for people trying to go down that path? How do you choose a good psychotherapist?
Well, at the time, I literally opened up the yellow pages and I called, no, actually, before I did that, I did call a woman that I knew. She had gone through med school, but then didn't do the full, the end part of it. So she had become a therapist, a psychotherapist, but she had a medical background. So I thought, okay, that might be handy just from the standpoint that she could understand the brain injury and what goes on with that, and then add the psycho part to it. And then it happened that she felt that I would be better served by another therapist in the office. And then I switched to that person, and she was outstanding. Unfortunately, she's retired. And yet, even through the organization, there are now some psychotherapists who actually specialize in chronic pain or in brain injury. And if I'm not mistaken, there's one in the resource section.
Yeah.
A couple of them. And I have to admit that if I was in anybody's shoes now doing this over again, I would be tapping into the resources that Brain Injury Association has to offer, because that's already more of a warm and fuzzy than trying to reach out into the world for who knows what.
Right. She's talking about the directory that we have up on our website. There's some individuals on there that you might want to check out. The other question I had was around the relationship with your spouse and how that goes. And I think there's a couple of people here on the phone, they're caregivers as well. I know a couple are caregivers of children, like young children, but some of us are caregivers with our spouses. And we have our own challenges. Any suggestions or points of reference that you would point to help with, dealing with this? I mean, it's a long haul, right? I mean,
yes.
You alluded to that earlier, but any other insights that you have for that?
Yes, actually, at the time that the accident happened and the severity of the headaches, it was all I could do to truly just deal with what was right in front of me with the children. So I was really hoping that my husband would hang in there, and kind of wait for quieter moments when, say, the kids are in bed, that we could have a moment to connect. I would need to ask for a lot more in terms of saying, I can't talk long. I already feel too frazzled, but know that I love you and that I'm doing the best I can. I'm not trying to be snippy or frustrated, but that I was just dealing with so much. Unfortunately, at the time, my husband was working 60 to 70 hours a week. So I really felt like a single parent at the time, which was frustrating for me. So as I had mentioned, I reached out for an awful lot of help with our children. And then when it came to our relationship, it was, we would hold hands even if there were no words and just say, we will ride this out.
Right.
We will still try and deal with each frustration as it comes up. And also not the I told you so, or like eye rolling. I found that really difficult. If I felt that he wasn't understanding me, if he was rolling his eyes, I go, please just ask me for clarification, because I'm doing the best I can to explain something. But if you're not understanding it, I would like the opportunity to give you more information. I can remember lots of conversations where what came out of my mouth would be scrambled. I would have like 4 different ideas trying to come out at once, and he'd go, any chance you can just pick one topic at a time? This kind of thing. It was a challenge. Yeah. It was a struggle. I'm not downplaying that part of it either.
Yeah.
I deeply appreciate that he hung in there, and that we're together, and we do have a very loving relationship. Interestingly, my husband had an aneurysm 3.5 years ago, and ended up with some symptoms of a brain injury. So now the table is turned, and I recognize the imperative for me to have the patience to ask him a second time, or to give him more time to answer, and not rapid fire questioning. That's really difficult with a brain injury. If the spouse or partner is frustrated, or the caregiver, and then it becomes more rapid speech instead of slowing everything down, or even just calling a timeout. I mean, we do this with children, but I think as adults, it's a really awesome strategy.
Yeah.
How about some timeout so we can actually check in with ourselves? What am I feeling? What am I thinking? And what am I actually really trying to convey or to answer?
Great. Well, thank you. I'm just going to take us off recording.
Sure.
I do want to thank you very much for this. This has been outstanding, but I'm going to stop the recording now. Thank you.